AEW has canceled a lot of things over the years. Saree's debut, Darby Allin's world title match against Okada, that one episode of Collision that was rained out in Texas, Jimmy Havoc, Mick Foley's 4th retirement match when his brain scans come in. But nothing gets canceled in AEW more than television shows, namely B shows. AEW hit paydirt with its flagship Dynamite, which famously ousted NXT from Wednesday nights. And thank God, because when it comes to building complementary shows around Dynamite, AEW is basically the Fox network in the 2000s.
Well, I suppose if all those shows go down the tubes, we might have a shot.
AEW's fan base is trained to like Dynamite and Dynamite only. Due to preemptions, Collision aired in the 3rd hour after multiple broadcasts of Dynamite recently, and viewership collapsed like the Spurs in the NBA Finals.
Does Collision not collapse every time?
There's no logical reason why the ratings should drop at the level it drops for Collision. I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it does.
But hold on, Dave. We all know it's going to die if we brand it Collision. It's better for us to call it Dynamite.
Today, we're going to look at all the AEW TV shows that have been canceled, what AEW keeps getting wrong with B shows, and a telltale sign that Collision could be next. Subscribe in Swahili. AEW Dark showcased dark matches on YouTube featuring a mixture of top guys and up-and-coming talent. AEW Dark had no stakes and limited storylines. In its 4-year history, there were exactly 0 title changes. Even the title of shows lacked any sense of urgency. 11 matches featuring Moxley, Darby, Riho, and Kingston. 6 matches, 7 matches, 4 matches, 13 matches, 14 matches! AEW Dark YouTube titles read like a toddler who just learned how to count. That's cool if you're a vampire on Sesame Street, but not for a weekly broadcast. Dark was AEW's opportunity to experience with different formats, stipulations, and storylines. Instead, it became a ho-hum YouTube show where Tony Khan hit all the black talent. Dark was nothing more than a less important extension of Dynamite, and as we're gonna come to find out in this video, B-shows modeled after Dynamite just don't work with this audience. Dark averaged around 200,000 views before being canceled in 2023. 2 years after the debut of Dark came AEW's sister B-show, Dark Elevation. Elevation featured Paul White on commentary, and almost every week, the artist formerly known as The Big Show would hail Elevation as the most exciting hour in wrestling. It wasn't. Based on viewership, Dark Elevation wasn't even the most exciting hour on AEW's own YouTube channel. In its 2-year run, there were 0 title changes. Basically, everything you can say about AEW Dark can also be said about Dark Elevation, but it lasted half as long. Dark Elevation was axed after 2 years, and they aired their final episode in 2023. After Dark and Dark Elevation went dark, AEW launched its most successful B-show in history. Or at least it was the B-show with the most viewed episode. Because on August 13th, 2021, AEW launched Rampage. A far cry from the Dark series, Rampage felt like an actual compliment to Dynamite the way SmackDown is to Raw. In fact, the first episode even featured a world title change. No, not the AEW world title, but the Impact World Heavyweight Championship when then belt collector Kenny Omega lost to Christian Cage. That episode on TNT averaged a whopping 740,000 viewers. If Dynamite did those numbers today, Dave Meltzer would soil his tighty-whities right now. This was just the beginning, because Week 2 almost doubled the Week 1 viewership for the first dance inside Chicago's United Center. This was one of the most impressive feats of booking ever, because while everybody assumed that this would be the debut of CM Punk, leading up to the first dance and the second Rampage, nobody ever said his name. Only hints. And when Rampage debuted its second episode, they wasted no time hitting Punk's classic TV static into Cult of Personality. Punk's return amassed 1.29 million viewers. This was during SummerSlam weekend, which featured Roman Reigns versus John Cena in the main event, the return of Brock Lesnar, and Rampage dominated the headlines. This is how you get people's attention with the B-show. Rampage even had its own identity through friend of the show Mark Henry's weekly announcement of the main event.
It's time for the main event!
Rampage famously beat SmackDown in a head-to-head quarter hour featuring Roman Reigns, though that episode of SmackDown was on FS1. CM Punk would go on to be a fixture on Rampage until he got hurt and was unable to anchor the show as AEW World Champion. From there, Rampage slowly but surely settled into its role as a distant B-show to Dynamite. Ratings slipped. 1 year into its run, Rampage dropped to 461,000 views. The following year, it dropped to sub-300,000 viewership. Now entrenched as a zombie of its former self, Rampage was doomed as a certifiable skip. Rampage didn't even make it to its 3-year anniversary because it was canceled by May. Despite violently fizzling out, Rampage laid the groundwork initially for what it takes to establish a unique secondary show that can pull in big audiences. And that groundwork's name was Phil Brooks. Once Punk and top stars like him weren't featured as much on Rampage, the show died quietly and painfully. After a hot start, there was never really a sustained sense of pride to keep Rampage hot. And once they started faltering, Tony Khan just let it rot the way he does with all those talented wrestlers he banished to Guantanamo Bay. It's the booker getting bored with his action figures all over again, but this time the toys are the TV shows. But AEW doesn't just fail with wrestling B-shows. The company also tried its hand at reality TV where not one, but 2 reality shows were canceled. Rhodes to the Top premiered in September of 2021 and centered around former EVP Cody Rhodes and his wife Brandi. The show featured the lighthearted escapades and behind-the-scenes drama of life on the road as a married AEW star. And Pharaoh! The show gave viewers an inside look at how the Rhodes family balanced life on the road and life in the ring, not to mention life as an executive of the second biggest wrestling company in America. Rhodes to the Top performed decently in the ratings for its first season and was even renewed for a second season until Cody Rhodes went to WWE, became WWE champion twice, and headlined the last 4 WrestleManias. With no Cody or Brandi Rhodes, there was no Rhodes to the Top. The show was scrapped and repurposed as AEW All Access, which premiered in 2023. All Access centered around then rising star Britt Baker. All Access almost immediately grabbed headlines for focusing on the real-life tensions between Britt and her op, Thunder Rosa. This was considered by many to be the best part of the show. The women, Britt in particular, carried this show. Britt's conflict with Rosa felt real, and I like that both sides got segments to explain themselves. Also, Britt's segments with Cole were genuinely heartwarming. This dichotomy is what I think made Britt a good character. She's understanding and sweet toward Cole's injury, but cold and callous toward Rosa's injury. Unfortunately, All Access was a ratings loser. The show was canceled after just 6 episodes, and the closest AEW ever came to reality TV was a series of backstage fights featuring CM Punk. More on that later. Somewhere in between Rhodes to the Top and All Access was the useless premiere of Battle of the Belts. Battle of the Belts premiered in 2022 and aired 12 quarterly specials. Since this was Battle of the Belts, there was an obvious emphasis on championship matches. But in the 12 one-hour specials, only 3 titles changed hands in the history of the show. 12 championship specials, 3 title changes. That's a 25% success rate for a show literally called Battle of the Belts. And 25 is too high because real math calculates the number of matches compared to title changes. So now we're at what? 1 title change every 10 match average? By Battle of the Belts 10, 0 titles were even defended. At this point, Tony Khan was just playing in your face. He didn't even try to pretend like these shows were worth your time. Like many aspects of AEW's DNA, Battle of the Belts is a throwback popularized by NWA and later WCW. NWA aired 3 Battle of the Belts specials, while WCW featured Clash of the Champions specials on TV, which had a similar vibe to AEW's Battle of the Belts on TNT. AEW followed a familiar pattern among its B-shows as Battle of the Belts started out hot with over 700,000 viewers for its debut episode. From there, it never drew higher than 527,000 viewers, and it bottomed out with its final episode, Battle of the Belts 12, averaging just 304,000 viewers and a .08 in 18 to 49. I think I'm noticing a pattern. When your calling card is wrestling and your brand is built around where the best wrestle, that's cool, but people who watch wrestling on TV have a limit and a different expectation. I'm not talking about the hardcores, but the general viewing audience, which includes dedicated wrestling fans who need an incentive to keep coming back. If all you have to offer is wrestling with very little stakes, then people will burn out quickly and move on. Just like they did with AEW's current B-show, which is holding on for dear life. In 2023, AEW Collision was an ill-fated decision from Tony Khan, who was in peak people-pleasing mode amid the fallout from the Brawlout. After CM Punk crashed out and beat the shit out of the Young Bucks, Tony Khan didn't take the shame on you approach. In fact, Tony was so pussy, he didn't discipline anybody. That was delegated to Bryan Danielson and AEW's disciplinary committee, which handed out token suspensions to all parties involved in the Brawl Out. Once the dust cleared, Tony Khan announced another B show in the form of Collision, which was to feature CM Punk and all his closest allies. Collision was designed to keep everybody happy while retaining Tony Khan's cash cow, Cousin Phil. In a familiar pattern, Collision drew an impressive audience in its first episode, which featured the return of Phil Brooks. 816,000 viewers tuned in to see CM Punk's first words since the Brawl out. Cousin Phil did not disappoint and even took a pointed shot at the Young Bucks.
You know what David Zasloff calls me? One Bill Phil. That's because I am the one true, genuine article in a business full of counterfeit bucks.
By then, CM Punk was the most polarizing man in AEW, getting John Cena-like reactions from that audience, which was a mixture of sickos who both loved and hated him. Of course, from there, viewership tumbled. Collision came nowhere close to its massive debut in June, and by August of 2023, CM Punk was back on his bullshit, where he choked Jack Perry a little bit at the Brawl Inn. Now fearing for his life, Tony Khan had no choice but to fire CM Punk.
This was the first time, this incident, that I have ever feared for my safety in a wrestling show, that I have ever feared for my life in a wrestling show.
AEW Collision continues to air almost in spirit, because now it's a shell of a show that really wasn't all that peak at its peak. Collision is a weekly ratings disaster because viewership falls off a cliff whenever they're tasked with following Dynamite despite a massive lead-in. Once something becomes uncool, it's almost impossible to remove that stench, especially in AEW, which has a 7-year history of B shows losing their cool and getting axed. There's no reason to believe that Collision will kick out of its current funk. And as AEW enters negotiation season, it'll be fortunate to land a lucrative rights deal for Dynamite, let alone Collision. Given the poor ratings performance of Collision, especially against stiff Saturday night competition from college football and WWE PLEs, it's more likely than not that AEW's Saturday night showcase will go the way of AEW Dark, Dark Elevation, Rampage, Roads to the Top, All Access, and AEW Battle of the Belts. AEW doesn't seem to understand this concept, but it takes much more than random technical wrestling to keep and grow a weekly television audience. AEW's struggles are not limited to its failed B shows, but also bad booking in 2026. The same year AEW fumbled Danhausen to WWE, only to watch him become the biggest star in all of wrestling. For more on that, check out this video.